Findings from the Netherlands Euthanasia report in 2014 indicate over 1,000 patients were killed and it was unreported. 550 newborn babies with diseases or disabilities were killed. 41 patients were killed with psychological illnesses. So psychologists have been helping patients with mental disorders make a rational decision to kill themselves. My question is, how do you propose Australia's euthanasia laws would protect the most vulnerable people when the examples in the Netherlands and the Belgium are showing the exact opposite?
Andrew.
Well, you've raised a whole bunch of things there. First of all, Theo Bohr, yes, he was on the review committees for 9 years, but he is also, even before he joined them, a sceptic about assisted dying. And when I first heard him talk and he said 1 in 25 deaths in the Netherlands are now euthanasia, I thought, oh, well, that sounds like a lot. And then I eventually worked it out. That means 96% of people are not affected by these laws. He talks about a 15% rise in euthanasia deaths as though this is an indication of something that's out of control. But then you realise the context of that the number of people that die in these laws, under these laws in the Netherlands every year is less than 4% of all people who die, and that the rise in those is an ageing population, and a lot of these are reflected in cancer deaths. I completely dispute and question your assertion that 550 babies have been killed. It's, under Dutch law, there's a thing called the Groningen Protocol, which sounds very sinister, but which in fact applies to very, very rare conditions of extreme spina bifida and a thing called EB, where your skin is literally flaking off, and it has applied to maybe a dozen babies. So I don't know where you got that figure of 550 from, but I think it's not correct. The other point you made about doctors in the Netherlands and Belgium killing patients, this is one of the first things I heard when I started on this journey, and I was very confronted by it. I was told that doctors were killing elderly patients in these countries. And it took me a long time to dig to the bottom of it and find out what it was. And what it was, and Ralph would know plenty about this, is it was in many ways standard palliative care practice. What in fact happened with these so-called murders is, because death is a very complicated thing and there are many grey areas, what they discovered, because the Dutch, unlike our country, have an incredible X-ray over their end-of-life practices. They know exactly what's happened, who's done it and how it's happened. We don't have that here. What they discovered was that these 1,000 patients who had been murdered, that in fact they were euthanized without their consent. Why? Because they were in their last 24 or 48 hours of their life. They were in a coma. Most of them had had a previous conversation with their physician about euthanasia. If not, the family was there. And more than that, they discovered when they really examined this that the physician had given the medication which had ended this person's life not with the intention of ending their life, but with the intention of relieving their pain. So you just gave a textbook example of what I've been dealing with for 8 months, which is conflation, distortion, and frankly, misrepresentation of facts to paint a picture which actually is not true.
Okay, our questioner, Luke Formosa, has his hand back up. You get a chance to respond to that.
Yes, no, I completely disagree with a lot of what you've said too. So the euthanasia rate in the Netherlands in the last 6 years has almost doubled, from about 2,500 to about 5,300. They reckon there's at least 1,000 on top of that was unreported, and the babies being euthanized as well. That is also in the report. It's in the 2014 euthanasia report, and also a 2010 report as well. So, but besides from that, I completely disagree with your assumption that there's no people slipping through the cracks in Belgium and the Netherlands. It is very apparent on the internet when you look at reports and papers, even academics, professors. There's a report that's been released in the medical journal Bioethics this year, and it specifies over 1,000 people in Belgium that were euthanized without consent. Over 50% were over the age of 80.
Okay, Luke, I'm going to get you to come quickly to your point.
Okay, 2/3 of these didn't even have terminal illnesses. Also, you have a 24-year-old woman in June this year who's been granted the right to die because she has had suicidal thoughts in Belgium. So there are people that are getting the right to die for cases which are not terminal illness, not extreme pain, And sometimes it's almost like these people just need somebody to talk to and some people to encourage them and love them. And it just seems like it's in the Netherlands and the Belgium. It is definitely a case for the. It is definitely a case for the slippery slope.
Okay.
Again, Luke, I totally dispute your source, then that might explain why you've come up with that figure. But I would remind you of the core things about this law, which is it is voluntary. You have to be an adult who is compos mentis, who understands what they're talking about, and that about what you're saying about that you're fundamentally misunderstanding when you say, oh, it's psychiatric, it's this, it's that. As I explained to you, the basis of this law is unbearable and untreatable suffering. It was never just about terminal illnesses, and that is actually the thing that makes this law so compassionate and humane. It is an understanding that suffering comes in many different forms. So what you are, the picture you're painting and what you're asserting is a very deliberate misrepresentation of what is actually happening in these countries. And what I found was a very compassionate and rational and very well thought through and carefully scrutinised system. And if you want to look at what's happened in that system and find out, I'd love to see you prove those 550 babies, you'll have no trouble finding it out because there is no system more documented anywhere in the world than those in Belgium and Netherlands about end-of-life practices. Who did what, how and to who. So go and look at those.